The text he never sent, Menglong's last unspoken words. The screen glowed faintly in the darkness of Menglong's apartment. It was the only light left in the room, a dim blue reflection that flickered against the untouched coffee mug, the half-open curtains, and the trophies that lined the shelf like silent witnesses. Everything was still. Everything was too late. When the police entered the apartment that night, it wasn't the sight of the fallen star that broke them. It was what they found on his phone. A single unsent message, left open in his notes app. A message he had typed, edited, and retyped again. Words that were never sent, yet carried the weight of everything he never said. The message began simply, "I tried to be what they wanted." No name, no recipient, just that line. It was followed by a pause, a long, hesitant paragraph, as though his fingers had trembled before pressing each letter. Investigators couldn't tell whether it was meant for a lover, a friend, or perhaps the world itself. But what was clear was that these were the last words Menglong ever wrote. In the silence of that small apartment, the air still held his absence. There were open scripts on the table, unfinished lyrics scribbled on napkins, and a camera still rolling in the corner, recording nothing but the void after a man's final goodbye. Friends who had tried calling him earlier that day remembered his last replies being unusually brief, just polite acknowledgments, void of the warmth that once defined him. He said he was tired, one close friend shared later, but we all thought he meant tired from filming. None of us thought he meant that kind of tired. The text on his phone read like fragments of a confession, part apology, part plea, part surrender. I kept pretending to be okay because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. I thought maybe if I smiled enough, it would start to feel real. But the truth is, I stopped feeling anything a long time ago. There was no anger in his words, no blame, no accusation, just exhaustion, the quiet kind that lives beneath fame, applause, and cameras. The investigation revealed that Menglong had been alone for several days before his death. His phone records showed no outgoing calls in the last 24 hours, no messages sent after that unfinished text. He had logged out of all his social media accounts earlier that evening. The last photo he took was of the city skyline, blurred and unfocused, as though his hands had been shaking. To the public, Menglong was the embodiment of charm, the man with the gentle eyes and the soft smile, a rising star who seemed to have everything. To his fans, he was warmth personified. But behind that glow was a growing darkness, one that fame only deepened. Every new achievement added more pressure. Every public smile another layer to the mask he wore so convincingly. People say silence speaks volumes, and in Yu's case it screamed. That unsent message became a symbol of everything he never got to say, the pain behind the perfection, the loneliness behind the fame. It wasn't just a suicide note. It was a mirror, reflecting the unseen cost of always being the light for others when your own has long gone out. Those who read the message in full said the last line was what broke them most. If someone reads this, please know I was never angry, just tired of trying to be alive. He never sent it. He never pressed send. And that single act, or lack of it, has haunted everyone who loved him since. In the days that followed, the world mourned. Hashtags flooded every platform. Photos of his smile were shared endlessly, accompanied by captions that begged the question, how could someone so loved feel so unloved? Fans left digital candles beneath his last post. Thousands wrote to him as if he could still read their messages. You were enough. We should have listened. One message could have saved you. But the truth was cruel. They couldn't have known. Menglong had perfected the art of appearing fine. In interviews, he was charming and articulate. On set, professional and kind. Even his friends admitted they never saw the cracks until after he was gone. His pain had been hidden behind the same gentle smile that made the world fall in love with him. The last text became the emotional core of his story, a mystery that blurred the lines between public tragedy and private heartbreak. Was it meant for a lover he lost? Some speculated it was written for an actress he had once been close to, someone he reportedly drifted apart from after fame consumed their connection. Others believed it was a message to his fans, a final way of saying sorry without causing more pain. And a few thought maybe it wasn't for anyone at all, maybe it was simply his truth, left where only silence could answer. The unsent text was found in the drafts folder, time-stamped just an hour before his estimated time of death. The typing pattern showed several pauses, each line written, deleted, then rewritten. That hesitation painted the portrait of a man torn between reaching out and letting go. His manager later said, voice trembling, "If he had sent it, even to me, he would still be here. We would have gone to him. We would have done something." But that's the tragedy of silence. It looks so much like peace until it's too late to tell the difference. The industry quickly responded, promising better mental health support for artists. But for many it felt hollow, too late, too polished, too convenient. Because Menglong had been more than a name. He had been a symbol of hope, the boy who made it from obscurity to stardom through talent and grace. And in the end, that same grace became the mask that hid his despair. In the months following his death, fans began gathering every year on the anniversary of his passing. They light candles, hold silent vigils, and sometimes read the words of the text aloud as if giving them the voice he never did. One fan wrote online, maybe he didn't send it because he thought no one would understand. But we do now. We do. There's a cruel beauty in the thought that the same message he couldn't send is now what connects millions. People have found healing in his unsent words, using them as a reminder to check in, to listen, to speak before silence wins. Because that's what Menglong's story became, not just about a life lost, but about a message that almost made it through. A text that carried the truth of what it means to be human in a world that demands perfection. His words, though never delivered, found their destination after all. They reached hearts that needed to hear them, souls that had once hovered at the same edge he stood on. And maybe, just maybe, that's what he wanted all along. Not to be pitied, but to be understood. The apartment remains untouched, a quiet memorial of what once was. The trophies still shine under the thin light from the window. The cup of coffee has long gone cold. His phone lies on the desk, now locked forever, but still holding that final message, the one he never sent, the one that said everything. I tried. I really did. And somewhere in those 4 words lies the heartbreak of an entire world, the ache of everything we wish he had said, and the haunting truth that one message could have saved him. The hours before dawn were heavy with rain, and the city seemed to mourn before anyone knew why. Outside Menglong's apartment, the neon lights flickered faintly, casting soft reflections on the wet pavement. The night had been silent, unnaturally so. Inside, his phone screen still glowed, faintly illuminating the words he never sent. That text, that fragile cluster of words, had become the center of everything. Fans, friends, even strangers clung to it, searching for meaning, for explanation, for closure. But the truth behind those words was not something easily untangled. It wasn't written in one night. It had been forming for years, hidden beneath rehearsed smiles, award speeches, and endless expectations. Menglong had always been known for his precision, every performance perfect, every line delivered with sincerity. But those who worked closest to him noticed the quiet changes long before his final night. The long pauses between takes. The way he would stare into the distance when cameras stopped rolling. The quiet sigh he'd let out before turning that famous smile back on. It was during one of those quiet nights that he began writing. His assistant once mentioned finding his phone open to a blank message, not unusual at first glance. But he'd been typing something slowly, erasing it, and staring at the screen for several minutes before setting it down. He said he was just thinking, she recalled later, but I think he was already trying to say goodbye. The text found on his phone after his death was not the only one. Deep in his notes were fragments, half-finished drafts, pieces of thoughts written at different times. Some were loving, others hollow, all written in the same delicate tone that mirrored his voice. Together, they painted a portrait of a man unraveling quietly in plain sight. "Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing in front of everyone," one line read. "The louder the applause, the emptier it feels inside," another said. The unsent message that captured the world's attention was simply the final version, the one he couldn't bring himself to send. Investigators later revealed he had opened a messaging app before switching to his notes. His last call was to a number that didn't pick up. Whoever he tried to reach never answered. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps it was his final test to see if anyone would notice before he vanished completely. Those who entered the apartment described a scene almost frozen in time. His phone lay face up beside an empty glass of water. His scripts were still neatly arranged on the table, one bookmarked with a note that said, "Remember to smile, more tomorrow." A mirror leaned against the wall, cracked at the corner, as if it had fallen recently. Beside it, a small photograph of him and his co-stars from years ago, their smiles radiant, their futures bright. But in that room, brightness had long faded. A neighbor reported hearing soft music around 2 a.m., a song he had once sung for a drama that made him famous. The lyrics spoke of hope and second chances, yet that night, it must have sounded like a farewell. What broke hearts most wasn't how he died, but how quietly he left. No calls for help, no goodbye to friends, just the whisper of a message left unsent. Psychologists later said that people often leave behind something symbolic, an act that carries meaning even they might not consciously realize. For Menglong, that act was his message. It was his last attempt to reach out, yet also his acceptance that maybe no one could reach back anymore. When the text was released to the public, fans began rewriting it in their own words, responding as if to comfort him. "You didn't have to be perfect for us to love you. We would have listened if we had known. You mattered more than your roles." The message became a movement, a digital memorial of empathy. His fans from all over the world translated the text into their own languages, posting it with candle emojis, videos, and slow piano covers of his songs. In one haunting tribute, a fan read his words aloud against a backdrop of his past film scenes, ending with the sound of a message notification that would never be read. One could almost imagine him standing at his window that night, phone in hand, city lights stretching endlessly below. Maybe he typed, paused, and looked out, waiting for a reason not to press send. Maybe the world was just too loud, and he too quiet to be heard anymore. Those close to him later admitted that the signs had been there, subtle but undeniable. His texts had grown fewer. His voice messages, once warm and animated, had turned into brief, "I'm fine" replies. His laughter, always so effortless, had become something he performed. There's something haunting about words left unsent. They hold both hope and defeat. Hope that someone might understand them someday, and defeat in knowing they never will. In that liminal space between sending and silence, Menglong's truth lived and died. His fans often talk about that line, "I tried to be what they wanted." It's been printed on murals, engraved in candles, whispered in vigils. Those 7 words summed up a lifetime of pressure, love, and exhaustion. The perfection everyone admired had become the very thing that destroyed him. After his death, a journalist wrote, "Menglong didn't die in silence, he died inside it." And perhaps that's true. The text he never sent wasn't just a message. It was his echo, the sound of a heart too gentle for the noise of the world. Months later, a friend of his shared a small, private story. "He once told me," she said, "that he was afraid of saying something wrong, that if he ever spoke about how he really felt, people would see him differently. Maybe that's why he never sent the message. Maybe he thought the world didn't want his truth, only his light. But the world did want it. They just didn't know how badly until it was gone." Today, people still visit the spot outside his apartment. They leave letters, flowers, and sometimes their own unsent texts, confessions, apologies, words they too were afraid to send. His story became their mirror. His silence became their voice. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The vibration of a phone that never lit up again. The message that waited for a response that never came. Menglong's story isn't just about death. It's about the fragility of connection. How close we can be to saving someone without even knowing it. One message, one call, one sign of care could have been enough. But he hesitated. The world hesitated. And silence won. Yet even now his words live on. In every shared post, every tearful comment, every whispered, "You're not alone." His unsent message became something eternal, something more powerful than he might have ever imagined. Because though Menglong never pressed send, the world received it anyway.